I've said it multiple times that this year they're going to compete for a playoff spot. They're going to make the playoffs. Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to another edition of RailCats Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Savetage, and today we'll be talking about an abundance of things. I'm going to get to Chuck's question that he asked me on Twitter, which was thoughts on the other teams seemingly building whole new rosters and the RailCats building off of a core of young talent. I'll be talking more kind of what to expect and maybe a bold, not so bold prediction, as it's seeming like the American Association is becoming a keen level playing field, which is something I'm going to kind of talk about as well on this podcast coming up. But I think what I'm going to start off with is probably I just want to talk about Lamar Rodgers for a second and what he's been able to do with this RailCats organization or RailCats team in the matter of how the few years they've been with the American Association. I know in the Northern League, the RailCats were a powerhouse with Greg Taggart, but going in the American Association, I think the talent level it's so much better than it was in the Northern League, and that's why eventually the Northern League was formed into the American Association as they took over for that. And I think that's where the struggles maybe kind of came in a little bit. The talent gap wasn't quite there, and the way the baseball was moving in that direction is just something that Greg Taggart with the RailCats weren't really going to be a success story going forward. Now, with that being said, with Greg Taggart down in Winnipeg, I'm curious to see how well the team does. I know they have a handful of talent there already. I'm just kind of seeing what pieces that Greg is going to be working with, what he's going to do there. But like I said, the main focus right now is the RailCats, and I think when you look at opening day roster from last year to what the opening day roster is going to be this year, it's a completely different lineup. I mean, you're just looking just in the infield alone. Really, 3 players in the field of play are returning, from that opening roster. I mean, Jesus Mariaga was going to be a part of the opening day roster, but he wasn't because of visa issues. But you have Daniel Langlois, Michael Woodworth, and Jesus Mariaga. Outside of that, you don't have anyone. I know when you look at the pitching staff, Harrison Francis, Chris Irwin, Jack Eisenbarger, and all of them, they are all there. The pitching staff's more there, but the revamp of the defensive side and the offensive side and the fielding side of it is completely changed. And they're young talent, but I think Lamar Rodgers has a good job of sprinkling in a couple veterans here and there to kind of help bolster the team along. And I think, in last podcast, I'm going to build off of it, kind of talking about, he just doesn't want 1 year of success. He wants multiple years of success. And how you do that is by building off of that, by building more players and bringing more players in. And the interesting thing behind that is it seems like Lamar Rodgers is looking internationally and not so much stateside. I think that's where the big pool of talented players come from, is Dominican Republic, Colombia, Venezuela, all that kind of, I think that portion of the Puerto Rico is a good. I know that's technically part of the states, but it's international to a certain extent. But I think that's really where the talent pool and to be a contained or to contain success over the course of handful of years is probably taking international people and bringing them over and having them play. As we saw with Vivas and Mariaga making it to the World Baseball Classic and being staples of the RailCats. Mostly Mariago, but Vivas did very well for the RailCats last year. I'm not denying that at all. So I think it's just one of those that he is going to sprinkle in people stateside, but I think the success portion of the longevity of the RailCats being successful is bringing people from over and signing people from international and bringing them over. But that could also be a byproduct of the American Association becoming more well known and becoming more talented. I mean, if you read in This Week in Association, I retweeted it. I read it, and it basically talking about all 12 teams and what they've done and major roster overhauls. I mean, really, the RailCats are the only ones that really haven't done a full roster rehaul. But there was a Rob put in quite a little bit of a lead up to it, talking about last year, Kansas City, was a for sure ticket in. Fargo, they won obviously, but they were a ticket in. Chicago was a ticket in, and Chicago struggled there in August. That's kind of where they went down. But you didn't really see it. Milwaukee obviously being Milwaukee as it was being successful on that portion of it. I think now the talent is getting to a point where it's going to be competitive. You're not going to have that single team that's going to stand out and be dominant year in and year out. I think majority, of the league is going to be battling for a playoff spot, and I think it's going to be that last playoff spot is going to be something that is absolutely crazy. And I think it was the Indie Ball Report. The American Association tweeted like, "What's your bold prediction?" And they kind of retweeted and commented. It was saying like the bottom four teams that weren't in the playoffs are going to be in the playoffs this year, and Kevin Lugo in his This Week in Association made the. I don't think us RailCats fans think it's a bold or a surprise or a bold prediction that the RailCats are going to be good. We saw what they were going to do, and I've said it multiple times that this year they're going to compete for a playoff spot. They're going to make the playoffs. And Kevin's basically said that watch out, Gary South Shore's looking good, and you have to credit that to Lamar Rodgers, what he's been able to do. I think with his connections through the Astros organization and being well connected all over, I think that really helps out. And he strives for a professional atmosphere, and I think that's what you're getting from these players. He's putting in the time, the work, the effort. I mean, the RailCats basically had everyone signed. Like, he was like, all right, let's get to it. This is the team, and we're gonna roll with it. While I think it's what Sioux Falls is like. They only have like 10 people signed, so like we're at the time of the recording, we're 21 days away from opening day, and they only have 10 players signed. And May 1st, players are reporting, so like they need to kind of step it up a little bit. But I think the American Association is just to a point to where it's going to be competitive, and everyone that's in is going to be competitive. Like, it's just I don't think there's really going to be a team. Now, granted, there's going to be a team that's like, that kind of rough this year, right? And it just happens. It happens with everyone. You expect a team to be good, and they're all right. And that could happen to the RailCats, and I don't want that to happen. That's just the real thing. If things aren't clicking, that's just what happens. Not saying that they don't have the talent, because they do. They have a talent to be successful, to make the playoffs, to win a series. I think you're going to have to battle with Milwaukee. You're going to have to battle with Cleveland. I know Chicago kind of did a rehaul as well. I don't really know how they traded a lot of good players, and I don't really know how that's going to work out for them. I think they're going to slip a little bit, but I think the big series this year are going to be with those three. If you can go 500 or you have a winning percentage against those three teams, you're going to make the playoffs no matter what. I think the testament to the RailCats are going to be when they face Fargo, when they face Cleveland, when they face Milwaukee, Chicago, Kansas City. So I just, it's one of those. I wonder how it's all going to click, and it may not be a success story right out the gate, and I think to be a success story, I think the Railcats need to get off to a hot start. If they get off to a hot start, that way they build themselves a nice lead. So if like they kind of did in the middle of the year where they kind of started to sputter out a little bit, they've already got that good enough lead to where they could have a hiccup here or there. I'm not expecting them to go out and be dominant, but there was a handful of series that they lost that they should have won. I know they caught Cleveland at a wrong time, and I can't wait. That's going to be my number one series this year, to be watching, because last year you had the heat, you had the rivalry, it was ready to go from the bat. So I think they're the ones to kind of watch out how they're going to do. But to kind of answer Chuck's question, about you know why I think other teams are rehauling their roster. And I think it has to do with a little bit of, Winnipeg doing a rehaul because you have a new manager in that spot. Chicago, players are getting older. I think a lot of it's players are getting older, and people are seeing where the failures are, in their talent pool. You know what I'm saying? Or where they're at, where, what didn't work here, what didn't work there. So I think they just, they said, all right, maybe we got to bring in some older guys. Maybe we got to bring in some younger guys, maybe mix it up a little bit. So I think I think everyone's starting to realize that the American Association is just competitive. It's going to be competitive, and it's going to make for a great season. And I think, when you hear about other leagues talk about themselves, and what the Atlantic League's better than the American Association, or the Frontier League's better than the Pioneer League, or they're all better than the American Association. I think what they are all lacking is the ability to have teams that are going to compete. All teams going to have to come to compete. You're not going to come to the American Association and think you're going to go to a team and you're going to walk over everyone else. No, you're going to have to fight for a playoff spot. You're going to have to fight to get on a roster. You're going to have to fight. And I think that's going to bring the eyes, to the American Association. And it may suck, but we may start getting see players getting picked off, but I don't think that necessarily is going to hurt the American Association, because they're still going to be competitive. So I think the overhaul of other teams are realizing that other teams are going to catch them. The big one's going to be Chicago. I think they got a big wake up call, over the past 2 years, 3 years. Hey, this year was we have to step our game up a little bit. And the sole one is going to be, I think Cleveland was it. Milwaukee, I think, was the biggest shock. I think that was a shell shock. I think, if people that don't really watch the Railcats or really pay attention, to anything outside of the American or inside the American Association, just kind of go to the games, just fans just want to do something, they hear Gary South Shore like, oh, the team kind of blows. I don't, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be shell shocked from that portion of it, but the fans and the people that pay attention are going to, I don't think it's that big of a shock to us that they're going to be competitive and they're going to find themselves in a playoff spot. I don't think a lot of us are surprised that Lamar Rodgers kept majority of these people, because he sees the talent. I think the talent's there. I think he's got his coaches in place that he wants. I think that with the fast-paced movement of the game, I think that's going to benefit, majority of these guys, because they're not going to have time to think. And I think sometimes when you take thinking out of certain things, things become a lot easier, right? When, you're up there and it's full count, bases loaded, and you don't have time to think about it. You just got to go up there, and you have a game plan, but you just got to go up there and you got to be confident in yourself, and you just got to do it. Like, yeah, I get it that baseball is one of those it's a mental sport, this and that, but you don't have time to go really up there and think. And I think that's maybe the best thing for this team. And Um, I just don't think it's a surprise. I don't think it is. I don't think the Railcats being good this year is a surprise. So I hope that kind of answered the question a little bit. I just think that building off of a core group of people is easier than doing a rehaul. And I think Lamar Rodgers understands that, and he's going to build off of that. Um, you know, you're solid up the middle, so you're gonna build off of that. You have a good starting rotation, depending on what Adam Heidenfeller does. No matter what, you still have a good starting rotation. Your bullpen, you bolstered your bullpen, and I think that was the biggest thing from last year. Was the bullpen wasn't that good, and I think bringing in the talent that he has, it's going to bolster that bullpen. He brought in the bats. We're going to see home runs go. You're going to see LG Castillo go off. You're going to see Sam Abbott go off. You're going to see the home runs come. Sherman Graves, you're going to see that. And it's going to be a great time at the ballpark. I think this year is going to be a fun, exciting time to be at the Steel Yard because we're going to get a lot of home runs. No matter where, you're going to get home runs from the Gary South Shore Railcats. So it's going to be a lot of fun on that portion of it. But, kind of going into a little bit of the pitch clock and watching MLB games. Yeah, the start of it is going to be we're going to see a lot of kinks, and we're going to see a lot of hiccups, a lot of bugs, a lot of things going to happen. And I just think right now we have to take the spring training portion of it and the first 2 weeks of the season, and we just got to let it ride its course. It gets better. Watching the MLB, it gets better. A lot of people are saying it gets better. We're starting to see game times come down. The fast-paced motion of the games are a lot better. And like I said, you're still going to get those 3.5 hour games. But what the nice part about the pitch clock is, it's going to take it from, what a 3.5 hour game is now would be a 4.5 hour game with no pitch clock. I think that's the big idea, is to limit those blowouts. And we're going to see it in the American Association. We're going to see those 12-10 games, the 15-1 games. We're going to see it. It's going to happen. And no one likes being at the ballpark when it's 15-1 and your team's losing 15-1, and you still have a batter going up there fixing his gloves or a pitcher playing with the rosin bag. Like, no, let's just kind of get the show on the road. And I think that's what a lot of people are liking, is that they're cutting it's cutting the fat off of the meat, right? What are we here for? We're here to watch a person throw the ball to the plate and a guy to swing at it and people to play. We're not there to see you, playing with the ball, looking at your fingernails, or tossing the rosin bag. Just go up there and pitch the ball. Like I understand that baseball is a mental thing, and you want to put strategy in, but you should be at a point in time in your career where if you want to be successful, if you get taken by an affiliate ball or you maybe make your way to the MLB, is that you don't have time to think. You're not going to have that time to not be able to do something, right? So I just think that that's what's going to help out the Railcats in this year. I think the pitch clock's going to help, and I think it's going to help alleviate some of the thinking that goes on. I think that was a big thing with the bullpen last year because they were sometimes putting situations that they can't dig themselves out of. Now they're not going to have time to think about that. But yeah, I know spring training's right around the corner. I just kind of wish, for a fan portion of it, fan side of it, that the Railcats were more open about things like that because, Chicago released, spring training starts in 2 weeks. We don't get that. And I kind of wish we would kind of get something along the lines of that, more of a, a little insight to it. I get that opening day is the big thing, but it's okay to say, hey, we're doing spring season games and the tickets are $5. Here's the dates. Come watch. Right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Um, or if they're not doing it, or only certain games open, it's okay to it still brings people in. I don't mind that. Just let the fans know what's going on. I think that's a big portion of it. I understand. It may take a lot too, because you have to pull someone to do the research in it, or whatever the case may be. I just kind of wish they were a little bit more open about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm excited for this year. It's going to be interesting. Um, I'll have some more ideas coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'll probably continue the once a week until the season kind of starts. Find something else to talk about. But I hope I answered your question, Chuck, about what you think. What I think of what the rosters and all that other good stuff, and I'll see things throughout the course of the week, and I want to comment on that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you have any other podcast ideas or whatever, something, a subject that you want me to talk about, I'm happy to do the research and try to look it up and give my opinion on it, because that's what we're here for, right? We're here for entertainment purposes, to discuss a team that we enjoy following, and building a brand, and hopefully driving more people to go to the ballpark because they're knowing what's going on, and not so much they go to the park. I don't know who this is, right? Now that you kind of get to know. But before I go, like I said, the 18th was the 1 year anniversary of me putting the Twitter page, the Facebook page, the YouTube page, the Instagram page, all that together to dedicate to the Gary South Shore RailCats. And I just want to thank everyone who has been watching the videos, that have liked videos, who have retweeted my tweets, who've been following me from where I am, a year ago to now, is something that I wasn't expecting. Going into this completely blind, is there a fan base that would follow this? And there is, and I'm happy for it. It's gotten me involved in a lot more ideas I want to do. It's gotten me involved in just independent ball in general. So I'm just eager to kind of keep this going for many years to come as a hobby. If it grows into something more, it grows into something more. But for right now, it's a hobby. So I just want to thank everyone that has followed the podcast, has interacted with me and all that good stuff. It's been a lot of fun, and I can't wait for the season to start, to actually go out and talk to the fans that have followed this and gain more fans. I want to do more. I want to be more approachable to the aspect of getting interviews, maybe setting up some Zoom interviews, that kind of stuff, or however I deem fit. I see how that's all going to work out. And once I get that ball rolling, I'll have, if there's someone specific you want me to try to get interviewed, that kind of stuff. So, give me, it's 100 games to work with. I'll figure something out. Just trying to figure work in this and family life in general all into this big pool, and try to make a good product here for you guys to listen to and hopefully grow on, and so on and so forth. But that's going to wrap it up for me. I hope you enjoyed the rest of I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you have, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, Facebook. This is on Spotify, YouTube, all that's under RailCats Talk. But yeah, that do it for me. I'm your host, Kyle Savage. I want you to enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening, whenever you're watching this or listening. And go Cats.
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike three. Wrap this one up in green and